Hello and welcome to Public Affairs Public Access on Houston Media Source TV. I'm Linda Cohn with the League of Women Voters. Most often we come here and we talk about elections and voting. This evening we're going to talk about that and also about Houston's future. No crystal balls are required. Here's the background. Please follow along with me. August 26th is Women's Equality Day. Each year since 1971, the President of the United States has issued a proclamation commemorating the adoption of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. It was the 19th Amendment that at last gave women the right to vote, that most basic of all democratic rights, the right to cast a ballot. You probably know someone or know of someone who's 94 years old or older. This person was born into an America where women did not have the right to vote. One small tick on the national timeline separates us from an indignity that our children cannot even imagine. At the League of Women Voters, we joyfully commemorate Women's Equality Day, but a little ceremony and a tip of the hat to history is not enough for us. So, we sponsor a Rising Star competition, recognizing young men and young women who have fulfilled the promise of the 19th Amendment, the idea that men and women together, citizens in equal partnership, can pave the way to a brighter future. We offer our rising stars a year of opportunities to share their talents and expand their reach as models of excellence in civic engagement. 4 of our Rising Star winners are with us this evening. We're going to learn about them, their personal stories, their good work in the community, and their vision for the future. Please call us with your questions and comments. We'll take as many of your calls as possible. The number is 713-807-1794. That's 713-807-1794. If you like to use Twitter, you can reach us with the hashtag LWVHouston. Justin Concepcion is the communications manager with the Harris County Tax Office. Kenton Wiltz is director of commercial management with Stubb Coatings and a Pearland civic leader. Chanya Johnson is a government and public affairs consultant, America's 5-minute advocate. And Jeff Reichman is with January Advisors, a local data management firm. So right away, our viewers can tell that although each of you is dedicated to elevating civic life, you're called to do so with very different approaches. Justin, let's begin with you. You work for the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office, and that's also the voter registrar. Please remind us how those two functions wound up in the same office.
Well, it's one of those things it started mainly with the state. As tax assessor collector, we handle, as tax assessor collector and voter registrar, we handle all we have 3 main divisions. That's in our property tax division that handles all for property taxes and the bills. And the second one's going to be the automobile, which handles like vehicle registrations, that's regarding your sticker and title transfers. And the third's going to be with voter registration, and that's mainly with getting people registered to vote and maintaining the voter file.
And that started because of the poll tax, which most of you don't remember, because it was abolished by constitutional amendment in the mid-1960s. But in Harris County, Texas, the tax assessor collector still retains the voter registration function as a heritage function from that time.
That is true.
We always have to explain that because it just doesn't seem right.
It's one of
know?
those things of tradition, and we always kept everything the same because there's that level of, well, let's just keep it the same since it's still working right now, and so that's just been the way.
Yeah, and some counties in Texas have opted for an election administrator role that does combine the actual election function, which in Houston is handled by the county clerk, and the voter registration function. But you guys are friendly. You
No,
work in the same
absolutely.
building and
Absolutely,
things work.
we work very close together on multiple issues, but on voters is one of them. One of them as well. When it comes to anything for the election, in addition to doing voter registration, we are also essentially the support for them during election day. Our office actually hosts a massive call center that helps out anyone who has trouble finding where they need to actually go vote.
Yeah, and I know that while you are totally supportive of collecting automobile taxes, you have a special affection for the voter registration function over in the
Absolutely,
tax office.
absolutely.
Civic engagement, again, at its most basic. Talk
Well,
about
a lot
that.
with our civic engagement, when we came in, we have a program called the Volunteer Deputy Voter Registrar Program. These are basically individuals that can elect to essentially help register voters. You have to be deputized. You go through a 1 hour, it's a class that takes about an hour. From the state's rules and requirements, every tax assessor is required to host at least basically 12 a year, essentially one a month.
So you're turning citizens into deputy voter registrars who could actually accept voter registration applications in an official capacity on behalf of Harris County.
Absolutely, they are deputized by our office. They get a certificate in the card that actually says that they are a deputy voter.
I'm number
registrar.
14068. Yes. And if the rest of you around this table are not already deputed as voter registrars, Justin will get you busy.
Absolutely, but it's not only that. Even though the state only requires 12, our office decided to go above and beyond. I believe that for the past 2 years when we came into office, we hosted probably over 60 each last year.
It's a point
and
of
this
pride
year.
for you
It
how this is
really is
expanding.
because we wanted to go everywhere around the community. Before this office only had the one a month was essentially in downtown at our office, and Harris County is huge. We are the most diverse, and we're incredibly spread out. So we went all the way from Tomball to Clear Lake to Kingwood, down in Southwest Houston. We partnered with the League of Women Voters. We partnered with multiple community organizations like neighborhood centers with both Democratic and Republican parties. We went to anyone who wanted us there, who wanted to help register voters. That was our goal, and we had close to 3,000 deputy voter registrars for this session.
And how many registered voters are on the rolls in Harris County?
I believe last I checked, it's like one. I want to say 1. It's a little. It's slightly. I know it's over. It's over 2 million. It's over 2. I'm sorry, my
No,
mind's gone.
2 million
But
is
it's
the
like
number. It is over 2 million.
probably 2.
Yeah, which is a high.
Incredibly,
Which is a
yeah.
high.
We haven't had it this high ever. This is the highest amount of registered voters that we have had ever in Harris County, and as one of the largest and diverse counties in the nation, we are incredibly proud of that.
Jeff Reichman, Civic Technology.
Yes.
You founded a firm to deal with this brave new world, this new element of public life, data
Yes.
mining, how to use it for the public good. Tell us a little bit about your work.
Sure. January Advisors is a small consulting firm. We do all sorts of technology development and data analysis. A large client that we have is the City of Houston. So we, as volunteers, help coordinate and produce the City of Houston Hackathon.
Okay, I'm getting nervous.
Okay.
When I hear hackathon, I want to run the other way and take my
Yeah.
credit cards with me. Why? What is a hackathon?
A hackathon is a gathering of developers and designers who want to use their tech skills for good. So essentially, there's a lot of
There's a little bit of mischief in your voice.
Well, I think that these are people who have extraordinary skills, and skills can be used for good or for bad, and these people want to use their skills for good. Oftentimes when we talk about hacking, we think of it in the negative sense.
Indeed.
And really what it is essentially being able to take something apart and put it back together again to understand how it works. And what we're doing with civic technology, by we I mean hundreds, thousands of people across the country, forming these open source communities and developing code that can be deployed in city after city after city is essentially reducing a lot of the IT spend that cities have and making good use of the data that it already collects so that the city can do its job better. And hackathons are great 24-hour events that allow you to see what's possible.
Geared mostly to the public sector, or are nonprofits, NGOs involved in hackathons as well?
They are. There's all different kinds of hackathons. Sometimes private companies put them on. The hackathons that we work with the city are largely public sector, and we get a lot of different people from all levels at the city participating.
Tanya, you would like to see used to become a city of advocates.
Yes,
Tell us.
absolutely. Well, I believe as an advocate or training people how to advocate, I believe that is probably the first personal responsibility thing that you could do, is that you need to know how to advocate for yourself, advocate for issue, advocate for your community. And so there's a number of ways that you can do it. I promote the idea, just become a 5-minute advocate. How do I do that? Pick up the phone, call your elected official, write a letter. Most of the things that I suggest and I recommend to people takes less than 5 minutes. But I believe that in order for us to be a community of unity, collectively bringing forth our ideas, we all have to be participating in the process. And if it's only one group participating in the process, only one group at the table, that's the only point of views you're going to get. And so I encourage people, you have to get involved in your government at any level, particularly the local level, because we know all politics are local, but we want to make sure that we have tools that we can use. With everything that's going on in society now, I tell people, listen, go ahead and protest. Go ahead, hold up your sign, do all of that. But I want to know, have you written a letter? Have you called? Have you done something other than those things? Because I think that is where you begin to move the needle, when you have people more educated about how to engage the elected officials.
So you're taking civic engagement then one step beyond the simple act of voting.
Yes.
You want this to be not just an election day event, but a continual interchange of ideas between constituents and their elected representatives.
Absolutely. The one thing I always say is that the morning after. And people are like, morning after? No, I'm not talking about the morning after pill. What I'm talking about is the morning after election. What are you going to do? That elected official have come to you and say, vote for me, please. Can I please have your vote? And you're like, okay, sure. You do what you're supposed to do. But then do you follow up afterwards and say, okay, now I voted. These are some of the issues my community is having. So I call it ambassador advocates. Because guess what? Not every elected official know everything that is going on in the community. So it's your job as a citizen, as an advocate, as an ambassador to your elected official to tell them what's going on. That's the only way they're going to be able to meet your needs or even assist you with dealing with those issues in your community.
Do you encourage like-minded citizens to get together and approach elected officials as a group, or is it better to work one-on-one as an individual?
I think collectively it's always good to go in the group, but I believe some people do not have the tools to be able to say, let me build a coalition. So guess what? Start with just yourself. Then you are able to see, there's tons of meetup groups and things like that, like-minded folks, but I would say start with you, because you might not even find in your family people that really want to engage in elected officials. Like, no, we can go Christmas shopping, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to the town hall meeting. So go by yourself, then go back to your community, go back to your family, go back to where you are and share the experience that you have. Hopefully it's a positive one. And if it's not, then you need to use the tools that you can learn just by being an advocate.
Do you like to tell parents, maybe grandparents, to take the younguns
Absolutely.
when you go to those meetings?
Yes, absolutely. I just believe it starts at home. It starts with really understanding that I have to use my voice, use the tools that I already have to be able to engage through advocacy.
Ken Wiltz, you're a Pearland guy. Tell us about Pearland. It is within Harris County, but it's its own city with its own history.
Not quite. So
Not
we're,
quite.
We're in
Okay.
Brazoria County.
You're in Brazoria County.
yes.
Okay.
And so Pearland is the city south of Houston. We like to joke and say Houston is our largest suburb. But,
You're a growing community, though.
yes, we're one of the fastest growing communities in Texas and in the nation. Don't quote me on the actual numbers, but it's either top 10 in the state. Over the last 10 years, Pearland has doubled in size. So we're right over 100-something thousand people. And so Pearland it's interesting because the territory of Pearland has what's called ETJs within it, extraterritorial jurisdictions, where the populations are in the city, and unfortunately, they can vote for statewide positions, but they cannot take part in the local elections, which is a little different because it's controlled by MUDs and different things like that. So, but it's a very, very fast-growing community. It's very diverse, and we have a growing retail business in Pearland as well. So
Industry?
Well, just as far as just not necessarily industry, but sales as far as I guess shopping. We've got our own mall now, and there's a lot of development, a lot of homes that are coming out. We've got some great schools there, Dawson, Pearland High, and there's a new.
You have your own independent school district.
Correct. Well, yes, we do. And so Pearland has, we share a lot of different resources. So there's Pearland Independent School District. We also have Alvin School District. We have Harris HISD, I believe Pasadena. It's about 4 or 5 school districts within Pearland.
I understand that you like to get out into the schools and encourage civic engagement there.
Yes. So, I mean, although, the job that actually puts food on the table, it has nothing to do with that. I got involved at a very local level on the Parks Board. That's when I first started, and I was the chairman of the Parks Board. So I was able to see that, in the suburbs, it's interesting because, a lot of people may work in Houston or wherever, and they come home, and we have children. So on the weekends, we're at the parks, we're playing, and so there's a lot of engagement at that level. And, I saw that a lot of people didn't really care or care to talk about.
But you do care. Tell me about that. Is this something that you learned in your family as a small child? Do you come from a family of community involved folks?
My mother and father, my mom was very active in the church. So I'm actually Louisiana born. And so there was a bit of upbringing that said, be involved. I was involved as an altar server and different things like that in the community, volunteer my time. So part of what drives me and what makes me do the things that I do is I've got 2 sons, and I want to be a positive role model for them, and I want to leave an important legacy for them, and I want to make this place better than I found it. I mean, so with that, that's kind of what drives me in the community. But you mentioned the schools. So working in the schools, we put on, myself and another individual in our club, we put on a program to engage students at Dawson High School to be able to introduce them to lawyers and the rule of law. It was a program for Law Day this year. And so it was over 300 kids, or
How old
young
were they?
adults.
How old were they? Were they high school students?
They were high school students, so they were all high school students from probably 10th on to seniors, 10th grade on to seniors. And we brought in local officials, state senator, state representative, the superintendent, and we talked to them about different issues. And actually taking part in local government and being involved in society. So,
do you think you may have sparked something?
I think so. There's a club that I've been keeping in touch with some of the kids there. They're out and asking me about what they can get involved in. I think a lot of it has to do with trying to get volunteer hours for colleges, but they're involved, and I think so. I mean, that's where it starts.
Johnny, tell us a little about your personal story. Do you come from a family of activists? Do you come from a family of people who would sit around the dinner table and talk about current events?
Yeah, well, partly. So I'm a native of Louisiana as well. I didn't know that about Clinton.
I am very glad that Louisiana's favorite sons and daughters have come to Texas.
Yes, we've come. Yeah. So basically, I grew up in New Orleans, and so for me, and I have a grandpa who we call him Grandpa Bob. He's no longer with us, but he always was involved in politics, but not running for office or anything like that. He just was a community leader. And he was someone that the elected officials could come to when things were going on in the community.
So you had that example in your own family.
And my fondest memory is when this woman named Dorothy Mae Taylor was running for office. I think I probably was 9, 10. And she came and she said, "Mr. Bob, I need your help. I'm running for city council." And he was like, "Okay." And he just said, "Okay, my grandkids, they can pass off some of your songs." And so
Grassroots.
Yes, grassroots.
Yeah.
So I remember standing on Martin Luther King Boulevard, and I believe it's Clara Street, holding up her sign, handing out little papers and things like that. And so that was my first introduction. Now, I cannot say that we sat around the table and talked about politics. I'm probably one the only one in my family that left the city and decided to go to Washington, D.C. and work in politics or work for our government and things like that. But certainly my grandfather knew the importance of it. And so, you know, he did what he had to do. He said it, we did it, and I believe it, and that's what I stand on, is being actively involved in my community and then helping people find their voice and advocating for the things that they want. Yeah.
Justin, you come from a family where politics was front and center?
Not
Or are you blazing a new trail?
not directly, not directly. And when I say this, like I didn't know this for a long time. And I'm born and bred in Houston, born and raised here, product of HISD, University of Houston, but my family's from the Philippines. What I didn't know until I visited is that my family on my mom's side of my family is actually involved in politics, to the point that one of my relatives actually ran for president over there, and there's like some state senator. Yeah, that's
Were they keeping this from you?
No, it's just like, it's extended relatives. It's on my grandmother's side, so it's extended relatives. But it was interesting, and my mom is incredibly proud that I'm in politics. But it is for directly in my family. It's like it wasn't something that really was looked at as something for us to follow through. It's not that it wasn't important. It just wasn't spoken at the dinner table. And there, for me, I've always had some type of inkling of love for politics. I love just reading about it and learning more and just asking questions. I think when the opportunity came for me to start working for Mayor Anise Parker's campaign in 2009, I jumped at it, and I used that as an opportunity to learn more and to expand my horizons. And I've jumped into City Hall and now with the county, and I just like good government. I like government that actually works. You say you're going to do something and it should actually work. What are the efficiencies? Is it doing what we intended it to create? And that's what I like to see.
Is there someone who inspired you? Is there a particular story or person that inspired you, that encouraged you to take up public life?
There's been a couple people, and not probably public, but just inspired me to always look beyond and do something that you love. I'll say this is probably when I was in high school. For a long time, I actually wanted to go into medical field. I actually wanted to be a dentist. When I was a senior, I worked for an endodontist doing root canals, and in his office. And I really wanted to become a dentist, and it's because he really inspired me to really look beyond. And I remember he sat me down in his office and says, Justin, I've been doing this for the last 40 years of my life. And there's not one day that I haven't walked in these doors that I haven't loved what I was doing. It's like, if you want to go and do this, I will support you. I will help you out. I will do whatever you need. And so when he asked me, like, but you have to commit that you want this. So I took some time to think about it, and I realized that I loved what I was doing right then, but I couldn't see myself in there. And so I learned that you should always, like, when you go for something, go for your passion. Go for something that drives you. And there's not a day that I don't look at what I'm doing right now in communications and public relations as something that my mind is always turning, my wheels are always turning in my mind about what more can be done. And that's what kind of drives me.
Jeff, what about you? Were you inspired by someone?
I'm inspired by lots of people. I'm inspired all over the place. I think that people are endlessly interesting. I think that, but to answer your question, I was really supported by my family. I think that from a very early age, they encouraged critical thinking and they encouraged reflection on what's happening in the world. Yeah. They read the newspaper cover to cover every day. They still do. And so there was always a sophisticated and informed discussion happening, regardless of what was happening in the world. And I think that support carried over into starting my own business as well, where there was never a question of, well, why would you ever do that? Or that's too risky, or you're going to fail. There was never any of that entering into the equation. So I feel very, very inspired by the support that they gave.
That's a pretty sound platform. Did you go to school to study statistics, computer science,
No.
Technology?
No, in fact, I have a master's degree in creative writing. So
Wow.
I wanted to be a professor. I didn't really think about going to college originally. I went to college, worked full-time through it, and was an English major and really enjoyed it. And then I ended up getting a master's degree in it and going to a PhD program out in California. And during orientation, I said, I can't do this. Oh, wow. I don't want to do this. And I found myself on the beach in Santa Barbara counting recall ballots in the gubernatorial recall election that elected Arnold Schwarzenegger governor. And I said, I don't want to do this. So I'd always been good at technology. I could build websites. I really understood how computers worked because I was fortunate enough to grow up with a computer. And I took a job with a startup. I knew how to write, and we did all sorts of government contracts. So we were selling technology to the government, and I just kind of started learning how cities work and thought, man, it would be really great if I could just work with cities full time. And so that kind of brought me to where I am.
Saw an opportunity.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting. You really have had different pathways to public service. Chanya, I know you have to leave and for the first half, so I want to ask you straight away, where do you see Houston 20 years from now?
Oh, 20 years from now.
20 years from now.
It's a long jump.
All the 20 years.
Well, I mean, I would hope in 20 years that our nation and our country has obviously turned a corner in that we have people who seriously take government serious. I tell people every day, Congress and over here in Houston, they are writing policies or passing legislation that impact everybody's life every day. And you need to be involved in that process. However you want to do it, but you need to be involved in that process. And so interject yourself. Why? Because our Constitution states that you can. That's your right. And our government is about we the people, not just one group of people. So guess what? I think 20 years, that's my hope and dream, that yes, we will have a citizenry of advocates. We will know how to ask for what we want. We won't look at politics like, I don't really want to talk about it. I don't want to be involved in it. You're already involved in it. Just by the mere fact I don't want to go into that part, but the thing is this: you have to be involved in the process I do some talks for AAUW at colleges and universities, and it's called Elector, and I always say, listen, you're on the menu, have a seat at the table. They're going to be talking about you. They're going to be writing policies about you. So you want to be there so you can say, this is my perspective. Because each of us represent different perspectives around this table. So if I wasn't here, then who would bring the perspective of, we need advocates. We need people who understand how the process works. And even if you don't, you can learn it because it's a simple process. Ask for what you want. You may not get it, but ask again. You may not get it, but ask again. But then they understand why you want it, who it's going to impact. And it can't be like selfish ask, I just want a job. No, it has to be for the betterment of your community. So that's what I really, really would hope to see in the next 20 years, that people, the government that works for us, but people actively involved in it is just not one group of people.
Do you draw the line at any particular opinion, something that you would not encourage advocacy for?
I don't think I necessarily do, because here's the thing, because I've trained so many people, when I say the list is like long, I don't even tell them like what you can and cannot advocate for. I just give them the two so that they can be effective at doing it. So technically, no, you can take whatever I teach and, use it however you want. I would hope they're using it for the greater good, which is to improve communities, improve society, which in turn improve our world.
Chanya Johnson, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're going to take a brief break and be back with our Rising Stars.
Yes. Ooh, you're about to get that one.
Welcome back to Public Affairs, Public Access on Houston Media Source TV. I'm Linda Cohn with the League of Women Voters. This evening we're chatting with three of Houston's rising stars. These are gentlemen who have been selected by the League of Women Voters because of their accomplishments and because of the way they are fulfilling the promise of the 19th Amendment. That was the amendment that gave women the right to vote. So here we are, 94 years later, men and women working together for a better community. Justin Concepcion is a communications manager with the Harris County Tax Office. Forgive me, I'll get that right if you give me enough tries. Kenton Wiltz is the Director of Commercial Management with Stupp Coatings and a Pearland civic leader. Jeff Reichman is with January Advisors, a local data management firm. Gentlemen, I'm going to go off topic here and ask you something a little bit outrageous. We're all banging the drum. We're all cheerleaders for civic engagement. However, is there a place for people who wish to opt out? Maybe they don't want to register to vote. Maybe they don't want to think deep thoughts about public life. Should we not support them in that decision? Jeff?
I don't know if it's about supporting the decision or not supporting the decision. I think that civic engagement happens regardless of whether you want it to or not. If you need a stop sign at the corner and people are running it, you don't want to vote, but you want a stop sign at the corner, you can get engaged. And I think that figuring out what people are passionate about and then kind of Trojan horsing civic engagement using that. If you're passionate about parks, you get involved with parks. If you're passionate about elections, you get involved in elections. I think that it's not so much about whether or not we should approve or disapprove of that idea, but we should figure out ways to get everybody involved.
Justin?
Well,
Is it a failure of enthusiasm if people decide not to register to vote? Is it a failure of your office for not doing the proper outreach that would encourage that?
registering to vote is an option. It is your right to register to vote, but it is still your choice whether you register to vote, whether you update your address to make sure, and whether you go out and actually exercise your right to vote. The reality is that the public sector will touches your life in every way, manner, and form, whether if you're driving on the road or if someone robs you and you have to call a police officer, whether you have a fire and you need a firefighter. That's the public sector. It touches you everywhere you go. And so it's one of those things that maybe we as a society need to better communicate that about. These are things that you have an effort to actually change. You can actually state how you want policing in the community to be. You can actually state how you feel the money should be spent in certain areas.
Well, now, you've actually mentioned that for some people, voting has become a chore as opposed to a joyful right of citizenship.
It's one of those things, whenever I see turnout, that when, like, this past election, there was in Harris County, it was a 30% turnout. Out of more than 2 million voters, that is abysmal.
And it is in keeping with the national turnout,
Absolutely.
which was the worst in 75 years.
Absolutely, and the thing is that whenever I see turnouts like that, and it's not just
We're not outliers.
It's not just us. It's not just, and it is also in previous years as well. And depending on the election, it can be substantially lower. But I always ask the question, why? Why aren't people voting? Is it because they're not interested? Were the candidates were not effective communicators to affect their message to get them to come out to vote? And so I ask the question of, well, is it because we as society view voting as a chore, as something that we don't truly understand the impact that it can actually make? And it's one of the things, do we start having to say, this is the impact that something can make? See, when we voted for this person, this happened. He said it was going to happen, and it actually did. And it's one of the things like, is it that type of chore? Maybe we don't understand as a community, and maybe it's that side.
Connect the dots kind of thing. That's what you mentioned, Jeff. Yeah. Yeah.
We absolutely need to start connecting those dots because impact's going to happen. Whether we like it or not, it's going to happen. And the last thing we want is only this small sector to get involved. No, we want everyone to get involved. That means success as a community. Is when everyone starts getting involved.
Again, you've done so much work with young people. Is the mechanics of the election process off-putting to some? Would it make a big difference if you could pre-register to vote when you were 16 and got your driving license?
I think
Online registration, just the nitty-gritty, the clerical work of registering to vote. Is that holding people back?
I I think that may be a deterrent. I don't know if it's necessarily repressing them or oppressing them. You know, we as a society, I think, and I'm just specifically speaking here, we tend to evolve, our laws do, at a much slower rate than our technology and everything else along the way. So as these new devices and new avenues and new tools come about, we're struggling as a society on how to incorporate those into our everyday life. And like you mentioned earlier, there's a disconnect. People aren't able to draw the lines with how the tools affect their lives, but they're also aren't able to draw the lines with everything they do from the time they get out of bed, how government affects all of that. And so, just in going to the park, I came across someone whose children were playing in the park, and I asked them, "Are you going to vote?" It happened to be on election day. He said, "Are you going to vote?" He said, "No, I don't believe in that. I believe that private sector can do this, and I don't believe in." So that's his opinion, but he was still utilizing the park and the park system and all the amenities that came about by somebody else going to the polls and voicing their opinion, saying we want this here with so much water and et cetera, et cetera. So I think, I've heard through, different channels that at one point someone's going to pass some sort of legislation in this next term for online registration. And so I think a lot of that needs to happen to engage a different generation that's coming up. I mean, when I came up, we had Nintendo, and that was great. And now my 6-year-old is playing with Kindles and iPads and mice and touch screens. I mean, that was unheard of. So how are we going to adapt our policies and our way of affecting change and taking part in this government using or utilizing the tools that are available to us?
Do you think voter participation would be improved if people can grab their smartphones on election day and register a vote in that fashion?
I think so. But at the same time, you will have people that say that with this right that defines our country, it sort of demeans that. I've heard that as well. It's like, hey, you need to take personal responsibility to take time to go out. Well, were we saying that when we had to deposit a check in the bank? Now we can take a picture of it and it goes straight into our bank account. So why not have the same access to cast a ballot? I mean, I think, to me, it seems trivial.
Well, your point is something dear to the hearts of every member of the League of Women Voters, because not only do we want the election process to be very, very accessible, we also want everyone to cast an informed ballot.
Yes.
So I will ask you, Jeff, do you see a time when people are going to be able to cast a ballot using an app?
Absolutely. I think that I don't know what that will mean. I think unquestionably it will increase turnout, as so to speak. But I don't know what that will mean. I think that because elections are locally administered, it's really a hodgepodge, and that's the biggest challenge of government at the local level, is that there really aren't standards. From a technology standpoint, there's no data standards between cities unless you're using the same vendor. From a voting standpoint, there's really no standards. I've lived in several cities in different states, and I've cast ballots on electronic machines. I've done the little turn keys. I've pulled levers. Curtains have moved back and forth. I mean, there's really, I've voted a lot, but I really do think that standardizing the voting process is a very complicated and is steeped with history. And I'm not really sure what the right thing to do is, but I agree with the general position that everybody should take it upon themselves to be informed about what's happening in society. And if they choose not to vote, my grandmother once chewed me out because I was 7 or 8 years old, and I'm like, you can choose, this is free, this is America, you're free to vote. And she really read me the Riot Act. She said, it is your civic duty to vote. And so I respect that point of view. Your
grandmother may have been a member of the League of Women. let me go a little bit further. The states with the largest number of people participating in typical elections allow mail-in ballots for everyone. In Texas, there are mail-in ballots, but you have to meet certain qualifications. Justin, tell us what the qualifications for the mail-in ballot are.
I'm not 100% on the mail-in
Yeah,
ballots
it's-
because it's a
You're
it's a
over
dual- it's a-
65.
It's over 65, and I believe
Sick or
disabled.
disabled, or out of the county during the
Yes,
early
during the
voting
early
period
voting,
or
during the
on
early
election
voting.
day, or incarcerated without the right to vote removed.
But one thing I will say about online voter registration and say, like, I think it's though those I'm overall supportive of it. The reality is this: in Texas we are incredibly large. We have many counties, and like Jeff had mentioned, there's not generally a standard for every single county. There are some counties that still do everything by paper. There are some counties that still use the voting machines. Like I said, there are multiple different types, and I view online voter registration, like I said, those supportive. I think we need to go take a step back and say, what are the systems like in the state? How are we utilizing the software to where it's the statewide software that is in the times right now? Are we doing what we can to actually update it? Because that's the reality that we have to do now, is we have to look at the software standpoint as far as everything before we start updating the technology. It's kind of like a house. It's great to have this new addition to the house, but if the foundation is not repaired, the foundation or there's cracks, if there's cracks in the ceiling, there's a problem. Then that new addition is not going to be as effective throughout. We need to maintain that structure first.
Does it erode confidence in the results of an election when you hear about these snafus, an East-Late voting machine not working properly, an East-Late voting machine with a mind of its own refusing to register the voter's intention properly? These are generally not substantiated, but my goodness, the rumors fly. Have you seen a lot of that in your...
Yeah, I have, and I think that the security of the machines and the security of the software that powers them is of great concern, because I think that most computer programs are very insecure. And I think that if we are going to employ technology to handle something as serious as our votes, then we should make sure that it's bulletproof. And I think that those machines are very, very sophisticated in their own way. I don't know much about their malfunctions or not malfunctions. I know that technology is never 100% accurate, but I don't think it erodes confidence in the outcomes of elections, just as the allegations of voter fraud are so incidental to the overall numbers of voters that I don't think that it really registers as important.
So one of the reasons for low voter turnout is the mechanics of the election process. Another is this feeling of, no matter what I vote for, no matter who I vote for, it's not going to matter anyway. Do you see that playing out in your own community?
I do. I mean, in Pearland, when it comes down to local elections for city council or positions, like I said, Pearland's grown dramatically, but the voter turnout has remained stagnant. And less than, 3,500 people actually go to the ballots to elect.
No matter the issue?
That's pretty much the well, for local standard, unless there's a bond issue where people have to come out of their pockets or voting on tax increases. I mean, that's it. So I really do think it's a level of understanding. So because, like you mentioned, it's very difficult to see anything tangible when you vote on it, unless you're going to erect a building or cut off the water or something like that. But a lot of the laws and a lot of the ordinances and things that people pass, they're gradual. So you don't really see it. It's like looking at a clock.
Is it too technically complicated for someone to, again, the idea of an informed vote? I don't know a whole lot about water treatment plants, and yet you're asking me to approve a bond issue. Now, how am I going to cast an informed ballot? I'll let someone else decide.
That is the easy way out. And unfortunately, so many people in our society these days take the easy way out.
Is it easy or is it rational?
Well, it's easy in a sense that I don't want to have to, I have so much other things to do. I don't want to take the time to do the work and investigate to figure out which way or get the research to make an informed decision. I think that's what it comes down to. So, I'd much rather take my kids to a ball game. I'd much rather go shopping. I'd much rather watch TV, watch my favorite show.
Are you saying that voters can be lazy?
I'm saying that voters would much rather do something else than vote.
How do you persuade them otherwise? How do you get voters to make the connection between what's going on in the ballot box and how they're living their lives?
You have to literally walk them through it, and so it doesn't happen overnight. If someone is not ingrained in the process, you're not going to flip a non-voter to a voter like that. I mean, for most people, it has to be something that touches them, and for me,
Give me one issue in play right now where you can inspire someone to get to the ballot box.
I mean, for me, it's you know, Pearland, for instance.
Sure.
Pearland's been incorporated for 100 years, but there's never been a minority African American on Pearland City Council.
That's a pretty powerful statement.
There's never been one at all, and you know, we are a diverse community, and so that, to me, if I told someone that, I think it says, wow, it's eye-opening, you know, because it's 2014. People really don't believe that. So that's one thing, I guess. The other thing is, you know, if you want to, tomorrow, I guess, some of the issues could be, you know, well, we've got parks that need to be built, and, you know, people would much rather take the money and maybe buy something else with it, but you've got land here, and you've moved here because you were told that you would have a park here. So if you don't act, then it won't happen. So,
You know, when we go out and we talk to first-time voters, 18-year-old young people, they're seniors in high school, we want them to register to vote, and we look at them and say, K through 12 education, for 12 years you've been doing what the Board of Education has told you to do. Now you're a voter. You elect that board. You elect those trustees. Now they're working for you. Does it connect when you talk like that?
to some
Sometimes I see a little glimmer, but most of the time it's
no. I mean, you have to really set examples, and you have to say, well, it's more than just talking. You have to ask. So you have to ask, well, what, and find a way that relates what you're asking to how they live their lives. And that, I think, it's the biggest part. We don't understand. We come from very different backgrounds, and we don't understand that people's experiences are different than our own. So we have to be informed ourselves. So once we ask people, you know, on the day-to-day, what do you do? What are you involved in? What do your kids do? And then by asking and opening them up, are we able to find out what will in fact affect them? Because what affects me may not affect you. And so that's the key thing. That's the
it's a
important.
conversation.
Yeah, it's a conversation.
Yeah. Justin, talk to us about new media, social media. The Harris County Tax Office is all over the place when it comes to social media. Is this how we communicate
It's one
these
of
days?
it's one of the ways. It's one of the ways. Social media came in probably about a little bit over 7 years ago when it really started getting a bit more traction. And it's one additional avenue that we now have as any organization to reach out to new people, to reach out to a new audience that probably we wouldn't have the opportunity to reach out to. It's a way that
And
we
in
can
real time, that
absolutely,
constant.
and that's a good thing and a bad thing. Because there's a level of, yes, you get real time, but at the same time, is it accurate? Because a lot of times, let's face it, a lot of organizations, sometimes they punt the ball when people are still in the huddle, which you've seen. And it's the reality that you have that real time in there, and so you can talk about the current events that are going on and how something is actually affecting in your community. We can hear from things like right now. We heard it was literally around the world with what's happening in Ferguson, Missouri, with everything going on in New York. It's heard within seconds of it actually happening, and you can actually see how people are reacting to it. You can see the opinions coming out.
So surely this must help develop a sense of community. People who pay attention must feel that they really are a part
Yes
of
and
the
no.
world. And
Yes and
what's
no.
the caution?
You are aware, but and there's what I always say whenever I talk to a social media group, and there is that we have to go beyond the like. You have to, beyond hitting that like, are you going to go and do do one step further, because you can't just hit like and move on with your life. You have to hit like and you have to say, you know what, this is affecting me. I'm going to contact my legislator. I'm going to write a letter. I'm going to get involved with a group. I'm going to go and work for a candidate to make a change that I feel, because I feel like this is an injustice. You have to go beyond, because social media has given us an opportunity, but only in some senses is it actually creating the action that's actually needed, and we need to go beyond that, because we have the platform, we have the way where we can connect and see how all of us are connected, but we need to start seeing beyond.
Jeff, you talked about debunking pseudoscience and tamping down rumors. Social media must be a hotbed of that.
Yeah, yes, it is.
So how do you counteract that? And we're just talking about one of the downsides. And Justin was talking about another one that you have. Well, the tools that we're using so effectively for everything that's good and holy, other people are using for things that will not exactly warm the cockles of our hearts.
Sure.
We have to be aware of that too. So
Yeah.
the media itself may be neutral. What you make of it is something else. But to talk to me about rumors and debunking.
Well, I think that it's very difficult to do, and I think that when you have a chaos of information, not just social media, but the links that social media references, and we live in a world now where you can find the news to agree with your disposition. I think that...
Echo chamber?
Yeah, there very much is, and there's not a lot of room for that intelligent dialogue, but I think that social media holds a different promise for us, and that's a promise through data. For example, there's a group out of Chicago called Smart Chicago. They've developed an application called Foodborne. It's an open source application so that you can implement it in any city. And what it does is it looks at Twitter in a particular geographic region and it says, does this person potentially have food poisoning? And it looks for particular words that people use, my stomach hurts, things like that, and it queues it up for a human being to respond, and the human being tweets back to them and says, hey, maybe you should report that into 311, here's the link. And it gets them involved in the system so that Health and Human Services can then go dispatch a health inspector.
And this is all without the interjection of a human? This is all done by an app or a program?
So the program takes the massive amounts of data and filters it down to something that a human being can process. It gives them the creme de la creme, and then the human being can say, oh, well, the machine's wrong. Oh, that's obviously food poisoning. So the human being makes the ultimate decision, but it streamlines the process considerably, and it makes the government more proactive in doing its job. If the government, for example, the city's Health and Human Services Department is measured in part by the number of health inspection dispatches that it has each year or each quarter. If they want to be better at health inspection dispatches, they can use tools like this. And this is actually an idea that came on my radar because of Health and Human Services. They're looking for solutions like this that are easy to implement and have a tangible benefit.
Yeah, we have just a few minutes left, and we began this telecast by noting that it's not been that long since women were given the right to vote in America. 94 years from now, what hot-button issue that we're grappling with today is going to seem so obvious in its resolution that folks are going to wonder what all the fuss was about? Kenton, I'll begin with you.
And it's only because social media and the media itself has really surrounded this whole issue of police and policing, and so I think it's only been 90 plus years since women got the right to vote.
Yes.
It's only been 50 years since minorities, people of color, had the right to vote, and so I think 90 years from now we'll look back and say the way we communicated and the way we interacted with each other was so trivial, because all we had to do was just open up and communicate and talk about, acknowledge, one, that there's a problem, and two, find the problems, and then three, these are the steps that we can do to move on from there.
You're an optimist. You see this happening within your children's lifetime.
I really do. I really do. I mean, it's almost prophetic as JFK. He said, oh, in 50-something years, we'll have African,
on the moon.
Well, yeah, a man on the moon. We'll have a president. I mean, so in 90 years, I don't think it's far-fetched to say that all these problems can be solved.
Justin, 90 years from now, what are we grappling with now that's going to be?
The first thing that when you said that, the first thing that came into mind was equality. I think what we're seeing, even just 10 years ago, we can see the change in how we treat people. That we're going to look and see equality like how we treat someone who's gay, someone who's African American, someone who's a different religion. We see that differently already today than we did 10, 20 years ago. And I think in 90 years, it'll be something that we look in the history books and go, wow, why did we do that? Why did we as a country do that?
Yeah.
And look how far that we've come. So that's what I see that's going to get tamped down. Because I think as in time, we become more understanding of everyone else. We see not what makes us different, but what makes all of us the same. We, regardless, even a party, you actually see where you can draw a line together. We're like, you know what, we can stand together on this, and on this, and on this, and on this. And that's what I think is probably one of the most important. That's what I hope to see in 90 years.
A universal heritage.
Absolutely. This is, the reality, and the reality is that even race itself is going to be almost gone, because the reality is that for America is that we are, that melting pot is going to literally happen to the point of all the different cultures.
And this pleases you. This vision of the future
It
pleases
does.
you. It's not dystopian.
I'm Filipino, so from the Philippines, that it's sort of something when you see a lot of different cultures coming together, it's quite, I see that as something that I like. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I do kind of see that, and I would embrace it entirely.
Yeah. Jeff,
Well, I
90 years from now?
90 years from now, I completely agree with both of you guys, especially on the point of equality, where I think as we look back on this, it only takes a generation removed to look back and say, why did our parents or why did our grandparents behave this way? I don't understand. On the dark side of that, though, I think that we're going to have serious issues with privacy and with what constitutes privacy.
Yeah.
And as policy moves slower than technology, privacy is a right that once it's given away, it's gone. You don't get it back. And we're rapidly seeing our privacy rights erode, and it's happening right before our eyes, and many people really just don't understand, A, how that's happening, or B, why that's important. And I think that as that happens, perhaps it's a little pessimistic to say, but I think our notions of privacy will change quite a bit. And our notion of what's private is going to change quite a bit. And I think that a few generations removed from that, they'll look back on it and say, man, look at all the good that came from this. Maybe the optimistic side. Maybe all the good that came from this data sharing. And look at all the problems we were able to solve, because I was able to look at how your cancer progressed and apply that algorithm to my cancer progression, and you helped me survive.
Thank you to our guests, Justin Concepcion, Quentin Wiltz, and Jeff Reichman. We hope you've enjoyed our conversation this evening, and maybe you picked up a bit of insight and information along the way. As always, we invite you to visit our website, lwvhouston.org. I'm Linda Cohn with the League of Women Voters. Thanks for joining us. Take good care, and we'll chat again soon.